How do we help teachers and adult leaders to be creative themselves and embrace their humanity in a world where they've got to give kids the space to become flexible, malleable humans who are going to have so many opportunities we don't even know exist?
In this month's episode, we unlock doors with keys of imagination, curiosity, and a sense of awareness that beyond this door is another dimension of unknown, possibility, connection, and creativity through the arts. In a space between science and superstition, the team of Robyn MacNair, Wendi Turk, Caran Holland, Lindsey Barfield, Elben Capule, and your host, Sofia Cuevas, welcomes Dr. Sabba Quidwai, CEO of Designing Schools, using design thinking practices that help schools and businesses to create a culture of innovation where everyone is empowered to use technology to advance from idea to impact, and guiding our conversation in artificial intelligence and the arts, and how we, in all of our human capacity, can create community and collaboration with technology. What feels scary and spooky sometimes can be courageous confidence in being human. Let's join the conversation.
Which makes it now, even like when we think about the student interviews, I even think about those in a different context. Like I think before we were like, oh, the kids love art, they love art. But you almost now wonder, like, why do you have such a natural inclination towards art when you're younger, right? Like when I'm with my niece, my nephew, everything, like they're drawing, they're playing with music. Like those are all the things you do when you're so little. And like the fact that they all had a natural inclination towards that, like what does that say about what it means to be a human, I guess, or expression? Or
have you ever heard of Sir Ken Robinson? He has written books and done very famous TED Talks on how we kill creativity in schools. And it ties back to what you were talking about the other day. It starts when the standardized testing happened. And yet we've got to combat that and the standard notion of what school is.
I think usually when we're scared of something, it's because there's so much unknown. It's like why you're afraid of like walking, like doing a hike at night, you know, like you don't know what's going to come at you. You can't see anything. You can't see your surroundings. And I feel like the more I engage with all of you, the more I'm learning about how art is really a mechanism for self-awareness. Not only awareness of how you see your world, how you capture your world, how you interact with your world, but I think a deeper awareness of how you feel and better understand who you are.
Also, the idea of looking at challenges as opportunities, because we kind of all live this in education. We lived it globally. You can't, we have this opportunity to be creative and try something new, and it was super scary at the beginning. And then we got into it, and when we use technology.
I find it interesting that AI has now created, and technology, as Wendi pointed out, has created two facets. You have the one that uses it for survival because you have to, and then you have the others that utilize creativity that they have, that they're aware of, and take it to the next level. And I wonder, when you talk about education, students getting ready for a global world, AI, technology, and then the onus of that humanity of, so why am I linking with you? What do you have to offer? How have you seen that dynamic play out, or that fear?
I think maybe people who are more in touch, because so that doesn't, like that whole thing that we're talking about doesn't just happen in a 45-minute lesson, right? You don't just come one day to class, do some art, and become self-aware. Like it's like this, like
you did though.
It's like this lifelong journey, right? So like one of the things I think about often is like when I see how scared people are of AI and I see all of this stuff, like I feel like people that are more in touch with who they are also more confident that they can navigate challenges and turn them into opportunities, because again, they have the awareness. Like I said, like the more I do with you, the more I'm making this connection about how art is the pathway to awareness. And when you have that awareness, you understand yourself so deeply and you know what you bring to the table. So I think there's a confidence that comes from that awareness. I think there's an understanding of how to articulate things about yourself and what you see that comes through that practice that you get better and better and better at. And I think it allows you to take, you know how they always say like technology will give you more time, more freedom, more this, more that. Those people that have that awareness, they see these mediums and they turn it into opportunities for themselves.
In the realm of AI and the arts, a pressing question arises. How do these two seemingly differing realms converge in a space where the very essence of authenticity and human creation can appear to be overshadowed by the omnipresence of AI technology? As we navigate this intersection, it becomes crucial to discern where our human expressions distinguish our artistry from the capabilities of technology. Tools like ChatGPT, Gamma for slide design, SoundDraw for music composition, Eduaid for educational content, and Midjourney for artwork generation have all found their place in the creative process. Yet, in a room teeming with creators and artists engaging in a dialogue about the evolving landscape of artistic creation within the tech-dominated world, we must explore how our learning, our experiences, and our artistic endeavors collectively influence our interpretation of the ever-changing reality that surrounds us. Let's delve deeper into this inquiry.
Well, I think it starts with what you said 2 days ago, and the way you compared what robots do, what humans are capable of. And it's that, it's what happens, I think, to speak to preserving the essence of human expression. I think it's what happens in those 4 C's that then interplay with AI, that then amplify who we are as humans, because this is what we inherently have. But this is this like incredibly insane thing that's come about, AI, where we can really do more than we ever thought we could. And it's that the togetherness of creativity, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, those could be the wrong force, the wrong 4 C's. But that plus how that partnership with the AI, that's my...
Well, and I think as creatives too, we need that time to be able to sit with our thoughts. And the thing that AI allows us to do is to shorten the length of time that it takes to do all the menial tasks that don't really matter. To write an email, sit and compose and like figure out exactly the right wording and the right tone and everything for some, professional or friendly or, and ask all these things, where it used to take, 20 minutes to write it. Now you can just jot down some ideas and run it through AI and it's like, oh, that's perfect here. Let's send that. And because that is freeing up so much of our time, now we have that time to actually sit with our thoughts and process and be creative and have that human touch.
I'm going to call Elben because he used album art for his own music recently.
Just for fun, yeah.
But what did that show you? What were the drawbacks of it and also the plus side of it?
No, I was curious. A friend recently shared with me a AI platform, I guess you could call it, called Midjourney. And what I did, just out of curiosity, was plug in my lyrics to like spit out images. And then I did it like with all my old songs too, because I was just curious. But what was strange is what it spit out were these images that kind of like made me re-listen to my songs in a different way. Oh. And that was kind of fun for me, just to like songs that were 10 years old, 5 years old. And I was like, wow. It kind of, because, I have always known that album art can kind of give you a predetermined thought on what the music's going to be like. And then to have a different predetermined thought to music was kind of strange. But it was cool. I've actually used it for songwriting too. I write for kids right now just because that's what came through my door. But it's kind of weird. I'm this 30-year-old man writing songs for a 13-year-old teenager girl. I don't have that experience. I mean, as much as I can imagine what it could be like, I don't. And I'm not saying AI necessarily has that experience either, but I have input like, I would like a song in the style of Amy Winehouse written for a 13-year-old teenager girl. Spits out things. Mm-hmm. And not that I'm necessarily going to use everything it spits out, because it's pretty rough around the edges, but it can spark that thought of like, oh, I could go down that road.
You know what's so interesting about what you shared entirely, though, was your willingness to take a risk and just to try without being fearful. And I think that comes because you have such confidence in your own practice and your own qualities that sure, you can see somebody else also create album art, but it doesn't threaten you, it inspires you.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we do that even with people. We meet somebody who we think is smarter than us or whatever, and then we are threatened by people sometimes, so we don't always collaborate or get along or allow for those voices. And that's the awareness that I'm starting to learn through working with all of you can only come through your creative practice. Like whatever medium that is, writing, drawing, audio, video, a combination, it doesn't even matter. But that awareness is the only way you don't fear what's next.
And I will say, and I'm going to go to Robyn for this one, because Robyn is one of those, like, I think this flashlight works. And it's like, Robyn, you're already in a dark room. And it's like, hold on, I think it works. And it's like, okay, just follow my voice.
Well, what you sparked me to think about was the book A Whole New Mind, Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the Future. So we've already thinking about this a long time. That's a book by Daniel Pink. So this was in the late 90s when this came out. And he talked about 3 things that were impacting our world: Asia, abundance, and automation. So already the automation was taking away jobs. We were outsourcing a lot of things. So at the end of the day, what was left? Our humanness. So there's 6 capacities that we're supposed to develop as humans that keep us in connection, which include play, symphony, storytelling, laughing, just engaging in laughing and those things, which are not anything that AI could create. What I love about it is we're popping out these amazing presentations and other things, and then we have the time to sit like this or to ideate about the possibilities and to really try to reimagine what is out there and what can we do, and also think about our end users, who the kiddos are, what do they need, what would they say, and then go out and try to make that happen for them.
I want to touch on the writers, though, because you talked about it, so I don't want people to think that, like, we don't support, like, you know, what's happening there. Because the one thing I will say that and I don't know enough about the situation, but the one thing that I do wonder is, why are you only talking about this now? Right? Like, I feel like we really, sometimes when technologies come, we glorify them and only look at the positives and the conveniences. Like, I feel like for so long, Netflix, everybody should be like Netflix. Like, the Netflix school should be like Netflix, not the Blockbuster and whatnot. And while it's great to consider the positive implications, I don't think we spend enough time being honest about the negative implications. And I just read a book that for the first time, like, I don't want to say the negatives resonated with me, but he used this term called pessimism aversion. And he says, like, a lot of times, like, we have this pessimism aversion. We don't like talking about, like, the worst case scenarios. But if we don't, like, when streaming came about in the beginning, where were the people talking about the writers and everybody else and what could potentially happen to your contracts when these technologies go mainstream? Or even where were you 5 years ago? So I'm just very fascinated by, like, this idea that we are so eager to embrace the conveniences without really recognizing the negative, like, of implications. And when we think about, like, technology and AI and everything, I always tell people now, I think about everything through the lens of, like, my niece and nephew. Because a lot of people will say, like, well, our data's everywhere. Nobody really cares about data. Nobody really cares because we as adults are so used to it. But I was like, my 4-year-old nephew has nothing online other than maybe the pictures we've posted of him, right? But he's got nothing. So how do we protect, like, what are the decisions we make now for kids that are going to protect them because we've sat here and considered these implications?
As technology hurtles forward, an interesting phenomenon emerges. The pace of innovation accelerates relentlessly, pushing humanity to new heights. Yet, amid this headlong rush, a haunting question arises from the depths of uncertainty. Within this ever-quickening technological whirlwind, we are not mere spectators. We stand as creators and discoverers, armed with immense power. But this power demands a profound responsibility to forge a future that is both secure and human. This enigma now confronts educators. While some recoil in fear of AI's march, others embrace it. The pressing issue remains: how can educators aid the next generation in this trajectory? As we venture into the twilight zone of technological acceleration, the mantle falls not just on creators of machines, but architects of hearts and minds. Educators embark on this enigmatic journey. Here within the classroom's ethereal glow, humanity's future takes form. Let's listen in.
I would say like something around like building community. Like, I feel like sometimes, and like, again, I think that a lot of this is like society based. I don't think it's like a blanket around the world, because there are societies where you have this. But I think just, I think that there's got to be more of a balance these days between individualism and community. So I think how, and that's why, again, when I was doing that presentation, I was thinking about like how art brings people together around issues that people really struggle to communicate in other spaces. I will till this day, I'm fascinated by how people responded emotionally to scenes in the Barbie movie. I am fascinated by that. The loud like reactions from people, like, or the way in people were dressing up and coming, like you can tell, like people felt it wasn't just for Barbie, it was what it represented and the ideas that were being shared. And it's a forum that allowed people to express themselves, I think, in a really safe way that you don't get on a Facebook group, that you don't get in an in-person office, that you don't get in other spaces.
If we think about it in a global way, it's the universal heart, and being mindful that there's other people and having the curiosity. So what I love about the arts is this idea of social artistry, that I can have a curiosity about a social issue and then I can shine a light on it through my art. Like Barbie, think of all the issues that got a light shown on it through that way, and how much engagement and thought-provoking it was for so many people. And this is what artists do.
I appreciate what you're saying about curiosity, but sometimes when you're famous sayings, we don't know what we don't know. What you say all the time. Sofia says that all the time. So I think as educators, it's our job to expose them to multiple sides. It's not just this side of the issue or that side of the issue. It's so many voices. And I was thinking earlier, when you were talking about AI and how we have the collective voice, there's so many voices that are coming through with AI because it's a common body of knowledge, is what it is. And so you're right, we have to have the discernment to know, is this a voice I should be listening to? Is this an okay voice? What are the unintended consequences, perhaps, but heading down that path of listening to that voice? And so, I mean, we're talking about some critical thinking and discernment to get to our kids so that they can make those choices and hear.
It speaks to what you were saying about Elben's confidence and the confidence that's generated in the human when they have to decide. I have to decide. I'm taking in everybody's input, but at the end of the day, when I'm creating this piece of me that I'm telling is my voice, it's coming from deep down inside, I'm bearing my soul to you. And then I hear all the criticisms. It's like, oh, that's not good enough. I don't want to share. I'm not coming out with that. But then at the end of the day, you have to be able to trust yourself to tell your story through your work. And so that's where we have to give everybody the opportunity, whether it's rejected or not. I'm never going to give you a piece of my art because I'm not going to put my aesthetic on you. If you say you like it, I'll probably go, oh, do you want it? Because what am I going to do with that? But also, if I can give it a space in the world where people can want to hear what I have to say in a different way, that's an honoring thing too.
And I think too, it's for creative people in general, that includes scientists who are trying to explore and understand and make meaning out of the world, and artists as well. It's that willingness to fail. And you have to be able to put yourself out there and have that willingness and understanding that this may not work, and that's okay.
The willingness to fail and the confidence that it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
Imagine, if you will, a team of teachers invited to a meeting where the core arts team brings in Dr. Sabba Quidwai to try a process called design thinking. Given the space to empathize and utilize technology, the team found a sense of purpose and a new way of thinking about how we might affect change. As the team now thinks back at the willingness of the whole to try something new and have a collective impact on learning, the question arose: what is the one thing that can affect positive change in students now and in the future?
I would say my 4-year-old nephew is so much more aware of the world than I am. I'm fascinated sometimes. Like, he loves going, he calls them adventure walks. Like, he does them with his mom. So like, even just yesterday, he's like, so when you come, do you want to go on an adventure walk? And it's fascinating to me because I walk through and I'm just like walking. But he walks and he's like, stop, look. And it's like something so, or like the other day, but it's so cute. He like wants to talk about it, but his awareness is completely different than mine. The other day we were walking and he was like, he saw a snail on the wall and he had just come back from, they'd gone to Texas and Georgia. So he's like, you know what? There's just not snails in other countries. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, what other countries don't have snails? And he's like, Texas. But it started the conversation of like, oh, those are states, you know, in a country. And then like we started talking, okay, they just moved from London. Like, what's London? Like, and what's England? Like, all of this. So it's just so interesting how like his thing about noticing a snail sparked this whole conversation about states and all these other things that. So then my sister was like laughing. She's like, okay, well, I guess he doesn't have to go to school today. And so it just made me think, like, when you say that, like how those questions create these learning experiences. Whereas when kids come to school, it's like 5th grade, sit down, take a look at the map, memorize your states, memorize this. Whereas his natural curiosity led him from one thing to an actual like lesson, like, you know, and I'm a nerd. I turn everything into like some kind of learning experience. But he triggered that conversation and he sparked that conversation. But one of the things that I've changed about how I phrase things, I used to always say, like, how do we prepare kids for the future? And now I say, how do we like preserve? Like, I always think if my nephew just kept his skills as is, he'd probably be 10 times more successful tomorrow if he went to no school at all in interacting with the world than most people. Because what he has is what everybody right now is trying to learn. But he's like, okay, so what do you want to talk about today? I don't know, you tell me. And so he's like, okay, how about the bees? And I was like, okay, what do you want to know? But it like sparks all these different conversations between us because he has this natural gift of looking at things and seeing things in a different way than I even do.
That's an artist.
Yes.
Artists see things, whatever medium you're in, it's how we see things and fostering that. And everyone can be an artist. It's learning how to see.
There's something that sparks that observation that leads it down that rabbit hole and that whole spiral, and then that's where the magic happens.
To start looking around and asking the why questions and not being afraid of not knowing. To be okay saying, no, let's figure it out. I don't know. Because I don't know. And then in all of what I just heard, it takes a little bit of time to bridge that gap. Because now we don't have to go to an encyclopedia or down the street to the library to open a book to then read about it. It's a, hey Siri, so why do butterflies hit me in the head? You know, like,
it's accessible now. It didn't used to be.
And so that goes to the privileged knowledge. When we're breaking down those barriers of privileged knowledge through a collaboration, perhaps, with technology in order to get more curious and to elevate our humanity, which I find ironic, that AI is elevating humanity in some respect.
I'm always with so many thoughts running through my head. I think at the end of the day, AI or evolving technology, and AI is one of those evolving technologies right now, should just be seen as a tool, like everything else. And I think history repeats itself in, like, I forget when Wi-Fi came out or just the internet, but they're like, oh, the internet, you cannot use that. And then now it's like one of the biggest things that, like, we wouldn't see our lives, you know, without it. And same thing with social media when that first came out, social media. And then now everyone's grandma's on Facebook. And just like with that, so here's AI, and I know people are afraid of it now, but then at the end of the day, it's just like, it's another tool. And I think how people are going to use that tool is up to them, and how we, use it in education will be up to us as educators, and how we can like use it in the next generation in their life, and how we can like incorporate it without being like, oh, it's this scary thing.
I want to say, I think it was Trevor Noah, and I think he said it about Sweden, but I think that like region kind of shares a lot of shared values. But he said in those places, they care about people, not workers. I think in those and other places as well, I don't know that everyone's identity is as closely tied to their job or their livelihood. Like here, if you don't, the day you lose your job, what's people's number one fear? Like, I lost my health insurance. So there's so many things that are tied to your job, from your credit score to what you can and cannot do to what's going to happen to references. Like there's just, it's such a web that I don't know that that happens everywhere.
Well, it's just where I got what I learned about the butterflies. I also learned they do phenomenal-based learning. So they utilize the space and environment and to cultivate that curiosity and preserve that curiosity and creativity, where the student comes to them with the question, just like your nephew, and then it becomes like let's learn about it then. And then it becomes a project, which then becomes an impact in the community of like, well, if you're noticing this and you're seeing the problem, how might we resolve it? And so it's like this learning from their life as they're living it, and then wanting to learn because it's guiding their curiosity and feeding their soul.
And it speaks to this idea that artists have always done, transdisciplinary research in service of their own ideas. So if I want to explore, I don't know, a concept of how recreating monsters, and I start to study, Frankenstein, and I read all the books, and then I go look at the medical arenas where operations happened, and then I start to find mediums and look at anatomy, like what am I tying all together? And we've always said in our department, teachers are our number one resource. We are investing a lot in our teachers because it's the people we value. While we can't make society change, we're doing what we can in this space to make that evident, so that because that's what the equity piece is, and that's because kids deserve it. So yeah, I would love to try to change society and all those things, but distilling it down to reality.
But you know what I think is interesting about right now, though, is nobody has answers, like even at the highest government policy level. And so I think right now, those people who do come forward and do say things, that's where you always have the most opportunity, because when people don't know anything, they don't know what they don't know. So they're willing to listen to the people like, oh, we've created this program, and you have. That's why I'm a really big believer for people who are doing your work to put it together in a story that's formalized with data, with a story arc. Because tomorrow, when you put it out there, that's what people are looking for. And that's kind of what people do. Like, I really learned that during the pandemic, that most people don't like go research who's the best person I should talk to for this. People just feel like, well, I don't really have time. Like, I got your name, I heard your name, and I just want to like go with this. And it's going to be the same for whatever policies probably come forward. The people who are engaged in the conversation, involved in the conversation, their voices will be brought forward.
One day at a time, one student at a time, and it means a lot to that one, or what we're doing. And the more teachers we can impact, the more broad the connection, which are not all artists and arts educators, right? I talked about monsters, I'm talking about webs now. The grassroots approach of this is going to really take off.